All right, formally and officially, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the fourth of 5 Service Academy sessions for the year. Hard to believe that we're only about 2 months away from being done. Today's session is dealing with difficult customers, and what we're going to do today is really take a deep dive into service recovery, what effective service recovery looks like, the advantages effective service recovery can play for us as individuals, whether we're receiving it, whether we're providing it, be it at home, with family, be it with friends, with coworkers, or as we're most intending it to be with our customers in that sense of the focus and the term here. Really what we're going to do is kind of just dive in and break into how we can manufacture service recovery. What are the steps we can take as individuals to provide that service recovery that's going to help maintain customer loyalty, help resolve customer issues, and give us that step ahead in keeping our customers happy and keeping our customers here. Now, one of the first things we are going to talk about, in the reminder email I had sent everyone yesterday, we asked you all to think about a service recovery instance that you have received, a service recovery instance that you've seen someone else provide. And what we'd like to do is kind of share those stories right now, take a few minutes to hear what kind of stories you've had and talk a little bit about the service recovery that you received. You know, we want to know what happened, what was the outcome, and we want to be able to sit there and try and identify the emotions that brought about. So the phone lines are open. Feel free to go ahead and chat in if you'd like. However, I'd encourage you all just to, if you have a story you'd like to share, just jump right in over the phone and let us know about your service recovery instance. Again, this is service recovery you've received or you've seen someone provide. Doesn't necessarily have to be UC specific. We usually get a few stories about someone having a headache with Comcast. So it could be whatever company that you've been, yourself experienced. So phone lines are open. Feel free to go ahead and jump in if you have a story you'd like to share.
This is Nancy at Leroy. Good morning, everybody.
Nancy.
Hi. It's actually a Busey customer, and I just happened to have this happen starting last week. Customer is joint with his mother and his brother, and the brother suddenly died here last week. And the brother's concerned about the funds. I think it's made him think, I could drop dead too. I'm older than my brother, and so he was concerned about what would happen with these funds if he passed away. So he is asking me for the impossible. He is a huge attorney from Springfield all of his career, so he does have a lot of knowledge. And what he is asking me to do in these payable and death scenarios is it cannot be done. It can't be. And in the conversation, I'm a very empathetic person, and I mean, that is a skill I have, is to be empathetic and to listen and to be able to then move people to the correct decision together. But with him, I've waited on him before. He lives in Chicago now, and he's very demanding. And there was this point where he said, I guess I can just write a check. I was like, Wayne, yes, it is your money. But we are here. I'm here to do everything I can to help you through this. I said, it's a very difficult time right now. Your brother just passed, and I'd already offered my sympathy, and we'd already had that conversation. And I said, we are able to help you. We will be able to take care of this. We just have to work this out in the correct way that's going to work for you, but it also is correct for the way our bank does business. And we visited a little bit more. He told me he would think about it a little bit, and he called me on Monday, and just as kind as can be, which he can be, and we're just moving forward with what is the correct thing to do. I look at our bank, I'm very possessive. It's my bank, it's ours. It's like my children. I protect them, and so when someone threatens me with taking the money, my instant reaction could be, oh, no, you dare, you know. But again, you can never let that ever show in your voice or your face or your body. Your instant reaction has to be either, I am so sorry that you think that, or I am so sorry that you've been made to feel that, or I am so sorry that I implied it. Almost the moment that I say, I am sorry, I see them just diffuse. Their face changes. It sets them back, and it makes them know that I'm on their level with them. There is a connection that you get. You need to make eye contact. Your voice, if you're on the phone, as I was with Wayne, I have to imply all that through my voice. That's all I've got going for me is my voice. So you just have to be cautious, but you truly have to be empathetic. That I love the video we watched because that is the way we do business. That I took a lot of notes. I'm going to use that here as a huddle. It's great, you know. But anyway, it turned out well, and it could have turned out bad. It could have.
Well, and
we're talking about $1 million.
We'll jump into that video here in a little bit, but there's a lot of good things in what you said that I want to touch on.
Okay.
And first and foremost, most prevalent there is that when we think about dealing with difficult customers, when we think about service recovery, we think it's an angry customer. It doesn't have to be an angry customer. It can be a customer that is just, for lack of a better term, up against the ropes for whatever reason. It could be grief in this situation. You know, the realization that, you know, for this customer, life is finite, and we need to have a plan in place. And as it sounds like for the customer, we need it yesterday, not as soon as possible. You know, you're pushed to sit there and come up with a solution or want an answer, want a direction as quickly as possible, and that right there is, you know, the driver of that situation ultimately, and how you respond to that, how you break down with that one, and I really liked how you also mentioned the emotions that were tied to it. I don't want to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, Nancy, he seemed mad, but he may have seemed more frustrated that you weren't able to immediately provide him exactly what he wanted, correct?
Yes, he wasn't angry, but he was very frustrated. Mm-hmm. And it could have led to anger because of his emotions right now with the grief and everything he's dealing with. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, which is the second point, too. Service recovery is rarely the act of just one thing. Now, that's not to say one item can't trigger someone, but usually what you're seeing in service recovery, it's the realization of multiple things, and this just so happens to be the straw that broke the camel's back. So in Nancy's situation, the mother dying, the realization that, you know, your own life is finite, the realization that you are the oldest living member of the family, which means there's at least from a number standpoint, a likelihood that you're potentially the next one to pass on. You know, all these different things building up, which is causing this reaction, which is causing this frustration, this want to get a resolution as quickly as possible. Great story all around. Like I said, we're going to jump into the empathy in a little bit here, so I'll save that one for now. But great share, Nancy. Anyone else have a story that they'd like to try and follow that one up with? And again, feel free to jump right in here. We're going to hold on for one more story so we can sit here in awkward silence or we can get a volunteer. Bueller? All right, well, since we're a little bit more of a quiet group here today, then we'll go ahead and jump into our next aspect, our next conversation topic here. And as Nancy mentioned, that was the Brene Brown video. So first and foremost, you know, as Nancy mentioned, you know, empathy is a very, very big aspect of this. So I'm wondering if there was anything that stuck out about the video in particular to anyone in the group, if there's something that really made sense to them, something that they really identified with more so than anything else, and how you see, you know, empathy as a tool that you can use, you know, to better serve our customers. Again, feel free just to share over the phone or jump in through the chat.
I like that they reminded you that empathy doesn't begin with "at least" comment. I think that we've probably all done that on occasion, not realizing it. And then I also like that they pointed out that empathy is feeling with people, not just, you know, being there trying to fix it, but it's you're feeling, you try to feel what they feel.
No, absolutely, Angela, and I love both points that you made right there, you know, especially with the at least aspect of that one. You know, when you think about at least, in your mind, when you're trying to you know, provide that statement to someone, you're merely just trying to help them think of the positives, you know, and I think too often we as individuals sit here and say, okay, well, life is a matter of perspective. We can't be upset about something. We can't be angry about something. We can't be sad about something. We have to find that way to move on and to move forward. Well, the fact of the matter is sometimes things aren't great. Sometimes things are going to get us, and they're going to have us not at our finest for a week, for 2 weeks, whatever the case may be. And we need that time to come to terms with something. We need that time to adjust as people and find what our new norm is. You know, it's not going to happen overnight for everything. There's some things that's going to take a while to adjust to and figure out what we want to do. And if you provide that at least statement, what you're trying to do, although you're trying to help, essentially you're just saying, yeah, well, think about this positive instead. You're trying to force someone to move along as opposed to helping them come to terms with what they're actually feeling. And that's where that empathy statement really comes in my mind, and the importance of empathy, as Angela mentioned, as well as Brene. You know, Brene sits there and talks about how providing true empathy involves you as an individual to look inside yourself, find something that you can identify with that's happened to you that allows you to bring yourself to that emotional level or to that level of understanding of what's going on with the customer in front of you. I know if you follow Brene Brown outside of this video in the past, you'll know that she's very much so a big believer in us being vulnerable in every aspect of life and not being afraid to share who we are, not being afraid to open ourselves up. One of the topics that one of the points that she's made that's always stuck with me is we as individuals are taught and told from a very early age to build walls around us, to build a suit of armor that no one can break, to make us essentially emotionless or unaffected by anyone trying to come after you. And to an extent, you know, there is some value in being able to, you know, have that thicker skin, so to speak. But when we're talking about, you know, service recovery, connecting with people, that vulnerableness, allowing ourselves to open up and feel with someone is a really big thing. So great share there, Angela. Anyone else have anything in particular about that video that they liked?
I like the thought that sometimes you might not know what to say, but you just say that. I don't know what to say here, but that is so sad, or I maybe don't have the answer, but I'm here. You know, I like that, and the idea that, you know, of course that's pretty basic, but that feeling with people's a choice that we make. You know, we can choose to do it or not, and not very empathetic if we don't.
No, absolutely, and like you said, Nancy, it's all about the choice you make and whether or not you're willing to take that step, whether you're willing to open yourself up. So there are 4 qualities in specific that Brene talked about and what builds up empathy here. Before we jump into this, one quick point I do just want to make, and I will contend that, you know, she made the statement that sympathy is a negative aspect here. I will make the statement or make the argument, and we'll go more into it later, that sympathy and empathy are actually most crucial if you really want to provide true service recovery here. But to her point, the 4 qualities of empathy, these are all things that we need to take into consideration, we need to think about when we're trying to provide service recovery for that bereaved customer, for that upset customer, that frustrated customer, whatever the case may be. So let's try and get together as a group and come up with the 4 qualities that Brene mentioned. Again, feel free to chat in or share over the phone. I will go ahead and type them in the bubbles as we answer them. And I'll give you a hint too. We've already mentioned 3 or 4 of them just in the standard conversation so far. All right, so we had staying out of judgment just chatted in from Kim. Absolutely, staying out of judgment was one of the 5, or sorry, one of the 4. Anyone else want to take a stab at one of the other 3?
Is it that it's a choice?
It's not that it's a choice. All right, we had another one chatted in from Kajal, able to see the world as others see it. That is the general gist of it. As Brene mentions it, it's perspective taking specifically. Two down, 2 to go. Understanding another person's feelings. Another one chatted in, that does kind of go along with perspective taking as well. Kind of how she summed that up that way. I'll go ahead and throw one up myself. That's communication. Another very important aspect. Again, the thought process that communication is a two-way street. It's not just what we say. It's what we listen to. It's what we hear and how we respond from that. What is the final one? I'll give you a hint. We've been very close to it. We've talked about it a couple times, and it's how we adjust our approach to someone based on this aspect that they're showing. All right, and Dara chatted in the final one, recognizing emotion. Absolutely. So the order that that Brene presented, the perspective taking, staying out of judgment, recognizing emotion, communication. To me, these are all 4 very vital things to empathy. These are all 4 very vital things to service recovery specifically. When we're sitting there talking about, trying to connect with someone, trying to connect with the situation that we currently are not in ourselves, perspective taking is really that big thing, and sitting here and trying not to say, okay, we have to approach someone in this certain way, or this is happening because of this. It kind of goes hand in hand, to me at least, with staying out of judgment. We have to understand that just because someone is feeling some way doesn't mean that it's in any way, shape, or form their fault. This could just be a reaction to what they're doing. The whole thought process that just because someone ended here doesn't mean you know exactly what got them there. Maybe their child got suspended at school and they've had to take time off work and they don't have, or they're not a salaried employee, so that 3 days ended up meaning that they, couldn't pay their mortgage on time. Things like that, understanding that there may be more to a story than just the end result. And if we're sitting there, making a judgment on an individual before we hear that story, we may not get the full picture and get the full understanding, and effectively cannot provide service recovery or reach out to them in the manner that's deserving. Just as the same with perspective taking, just because someone isn't able to make a payment doesn't mean that they're bad with money. So that's why I say those two kind of go hand in hand. Recognizing emotion. For me, this is really about how you are going to respond to the individual. I don't feel that we as, service providers or just as human beings talking from one person to another, I don't feel that we should be in a situation where we're providing the same level of emotion to every individual, because the only emotion that works the same for someone that's happy as it does for someone that's sad, as it does for someone that's angry, is no emotion, just to be a blank slate. And whenever you are that blank slate, you're either not empathizing with them because you're not able to show that you're happy for them, or you can't show that you understand why they're upset or why they're grieving, whatever the case may be. You're not able to make that visual connection with them. You're not able to communicate that visually. And then again, as we mentioned with communication, it is that two-way street, being able to sit there and hear everything that the customer has to say to understand exactly what happened to get them where they are at. And then being able to sit there, take that information, process that internally, understand what you want to do as a result from that, and then push that forward. So when we talk about empathy as far as service recovery goes, I want to throw out a couple of statistics that we were able to find here when studying for this program. First and foremost, 82% of customers have left a company due to bad service. Now at this point, what I normally do whenever we have one of the in-person classes is ask for a show of hands and say how many individuals have left a company because of the service level that they've received. And the 3 classes that we did in person for this session, there wasn't a single person in those classes that didn't raise their hand. So I want to know where those other 18% of people that actually stayed with someone are hiding at. But the fact of the matter is that in today's world, there are too many different options out there, be it a boutique provider who provides one specific service, or different options, especially with the online options available to do everything. You can choose and pick wherever you want to go. And if you don't feel you're receiving service that's up to par, why are you going to stay when you have 5 other options that all you have to do is log on the computer to get? They further interviewed those individuals and found that 70% specifically left because of how they were treated. So again, this is what we're talking about with that empathy aspect. If someone's not able to connect or understand with you, why are you willing to stay, and why are you not willing to go? And, I sit there and I think about, for me, for instance, this one opportunity, or this one time where our dishwasher at home went out. We had a homeowner's warranty when we purchased our home. The dishwasher should have been covered because it was working just fine when we bought the house, and a year later it had went ahead and bit the dust. And when we were sitting there, we thought it was an open shut case. It had been working. There was no reason for us to think that it wasn't just a malfunction. We thought it was going to be covered. When they were sitting there and they were looking at the policy, they reviewed our home inspection, and the home inspector said, while this is not a problem for the dishwasher itself, the dishwashing machine is not routed to the proper drain. So long story short, the water should be draining to the right, is draining to the left, I don't know. But because they're sitting there, and even though it said it wasn't a problem, they terminated our claim right there and said, nope, you owe the $100 fee for even contacting us about this, and we're not going to do anything. So sitting there and not being able to connect with me as an individual and understand how frustrating that is, that right there, if it wasn't, paid in advance, we would have just cut the term and gone to somebody else. So, taking those opportunities and being offended by them because someone's not willing just to see eye to eye with you and understand why something may be frustrating. But the good news is that there is an opportunity to recover any of these situations here. And if we do provide true service recovery that gets to the customer's problem and resolves that customer's problem, they are just as likely to tell 4 to 6 people at how good of service they received as those people are to tell 4 to 6 people at how bad their service is. People don't want to leave someone. People like, the comfortability. They like knowing that they have a past history with someone. And if we can sit there and do whatever it is possible to make something right, usually the customer is going to side in our favor here. So that's some very important things to think about when we're talking about service recovery. And kind of where we're going to go from here is trying to figure out how we as individuals can manufacture that level of service recovery here. So when we were going through, or when I was designing this course, 3 or 4 years ago, the thought process popped in my head as how similar providing service recovery is to an emergency room triage. Whenever you are forced to go to an emergency room triage, the intake specialist gets all the information and looks at your file to see exactly what's potentially wrong with you, where you're at, and then stacks the level of the customers to be seen based off of need. From there, you're actually going to meet with the doctor, and they're going to ask more detailed questions. They're going to take whatever tests they need to take to try and diagnose what's wrong with you. And then they're going to offer that treatment plan. Here's what we need to do to get you better. Oftentimes, when you have a situation that you need to go to in the ER, there's going to be a follow-up with a doctor to sit there and make sure everything's been working out, make sure you're recovering or you're healing as you're supposed to. And then they're also going to take any steps to prevent future issues from happening again, be that physical therapy, be that training, whatever the case may be. And when I was sitting there thinking about that, I couldn't help but think of just how close that is to service recovery and what we need to do. The patient check-in, we need to talk with the customer and, more importantly, listen to the customer to hear exactly what's going on. The diagnosis, when we're able to sit there, get that information, ask follow-up questions, whatever the case may be, we're sitting there trying to make sense of everything that's going on and trying to figure out what the issue or what the problem is and not just the issue that they're presenting us with. And then diagnosing that and offering the customer what we're going to do to correct that problem or the treatment plan. Again, following up with the customer just the same. Just because it works 2 days from now doesn't mean it's going to work 30 days from now, and being able to sit there and take that proactive approach to following up with the customer and making sure everything's still in working order for them. And then that prevention aspect. If we are not taking advantage of issues that happen to one customer and seeing if we can avoid that issue from happening to other customers, we're doing all of our customers a disservice here. So really we're going to talk about each of these 5 steps in more detail. And kind of what we're going to do to get through this one, we've got an actual patient scenario, and we'll refer back to this one here in a little bit. But I want everyone to take a few minutes just to familiarize yourself with the situation, what's going on. We have an individual who has access to one cable company. They called to cancel a premium channel after the initial trial pricing expired. And this is now their 3rd consecutive statement that they've been billed, and each time they've tried to call and cancel 3, now 4 times in a row, and have spent a minimum of about 1 hour and 7 minutes per call trying to cancel this service here. So when we sit there and we talk about that patient check-in, one of the big things we can do is sit here and prepare ourselves for dealing with the customer in front of us. So what are some of the tools and resources that are available to us as associates at Busey to help prepare ourselves for the service recovery situation that we're about to approach, be it a resource, be it policy, procedure, whatever the case is? What resources are available to us as associates? Feel free to chat in or share, and I will type onto the screen as they're presented. All right, we just had someone type in customer notes, and that is actually a great way to go about that one. One of the nice things about having a customer relationship management tool is that we are able to sit there and type about different interactions we've had with a particular customer over time, and being able to sit there and review those notes to see if this is potentially something that's a recurring issue, to see if something's already been tried, to essentially take a different approach to it so we're not frustrating the customer again by trying something that already hasn't worked. Just whatever we can do or can glean from that to understand, what may be going on in a customer's head and how we should work with them, how we should respond to them in those situations. Asking clarification questions. That was typed in by Amber over the chat, and that is a great opportunity there. You know, again, when we're talking about having that two-way communication, especially in a service recovery situation, we want to make sure we have all the information necessary to make a formal diagnosis. When we're really trying to provide that service recovery here, we need to understand what all is going on, and one of the biggest aspects or one of the biggest benefits of that is just sitting there and trying to find, you know, the total picture, what the actual problem is. One of the things that we have to remember is we do work at a bank 5 days a week. We have we have a better understanding, we have a better knowledge of everything that happens at a bank. You know, we had one individual who shared a story yesterday about how a customer had been taking their paycheck and putting it on a travel card and had been paying, you know, a high fee, losing their money from their paycheck because they had just wanted to put it on a travel card because they weren't aware of how a checking account worked. And they didn't want to, or they didn't trust at that point in time. So our individual was able to sit there and have a conversation and let them know exactly how the checking account works and what the advantages are, and most importantly, how they weren't going to be losing a percentage of their paycheck every other week just to have it on this, you know, this prepaid debit card, essentially. So not everyone has that information available to them. So what we can benefit from when we're listening to their stories is trying to gauge what the symptoms are, so to speak, if you want to keep with the medical theme, understand what the details of their problem are, and then being able to sit there, combine all those details into one specific form of action. Other items that are being chatted in, paying attention to body language. Absolutely a good one. When we're talking about Brene Brown talking about recognizing emotions, that is a great way to kind of get a glimpse into what they may be. If they're leaning in and they've got their hands clenched, if they've got a furrowed brow, you can tell they're a little more upset. You know, if they're pushed back, if they're leaning back, if they've got their arms crossed, you can tell they're disconnected or disengaged, or that they may just not feel like they're getting the proper service or the proper approach that they'd like to see. Other ones chatted in, listening and empathizing, absolutely. We went into a little more detail on those, but absolutely 100% required right there. Knowing who and when to escalate, always a good one right there. One thing, we'll get a little bit more into this later here, I'm going to encourage everyone to always take ownership and do whatever they can to sit there and handle the situation, but sometimes you will have to transfer. There's just no way around that one, and as Kathy had mentioned in her statement there, it's knowing when you've reached that line, when it is necessary to transfer and take that extra step. So a lot of great ideas there, a lot of great ways we can sit there and prepare ourselves and get a full understanding of what the customer's problem is here. So I'm going to bring back up our customer with Grumpy Cat here. And we're talking a lot about understanding the difference between a customer's issue and a customer's problem. So when we talk about that specifically, the issue is going to be the matter at hand. The problem we're going to be talking about as the root cause, what is actually the source of their frustration. Sometimes the problem and the issue may be one and the same, but again, I'm going to contend that more often than not, the issue at hand is just the straw that broke the camel's back, and there's a lot more behind it that is actually entailing the problem here. So when we're looking at the patient chart, what is Grumpy Cat's issue and what is Grumpy Cat's problem? And again, we can chat it in or we can share over the phone. All right. right, so we've got our problem here. I'm going to go ahead and see if we can get an answer on the issue. Patty, you are correct here, but I just want to see if we can get the idea of what the issue is before we talk about the problem. All right, so Kathy chatted in that the issue is that they're still being charged for a service that they have canceled. That is 100% the issue here. They have tried to cancel the service 3 times. It's still not being effectively handled. That is why they're calling. That is why they're so upset in this immediate call. That is the straw that broke the camel's back. Back to Patty's point, as I had mentioned earlier, the problem is not that they're not canceling the service. The problem is that they're not being heard, that they're not being respected as an individual. They are just a number on a sheet here. If you look at the background of the situation, this customer has access to only one cable company. So their choices are to either have cable or not have cable. Now, granted, in today's world, as long as you have internet access, that's a far more simpler move to make. But if you think about it before, internet TV took over, started taking over the world, when you had access to cable or you had no TV, that could be a difficult choice to make, depending on what you like to do to relax. Some people are perfectly content with reading the entire time. I know personally there are times when I absolutely need to pop on Paw Patrol just to calm my kids down, to allow me to get something done, be it dishes, making dinner, whatever the case may be. Sometimes I need it just to get that break and then actually handle some adulting in my life. So when you're talking about that, you only have that one option to go with or to go without, and then you're having to deal with all these problems. You get that idea to where you really aren't being respected as an individual, and that right there is the problem. If we are merely sitting here trying to handle the issue and not trying to address the entire problem, all we're doing is putting a Band-Aid over the problem, or putting a Band-Aid over it. Yes, that may stop the bleeding. It may cause the immediate issue to be resolved, but there's still that problem. Okay, you finally cancel HBO. I finally have to start paying for it. Those negative emotions are still working over here, and I guarantee you the second another cable provider pops in, this patient grumpy cat is going to be jumping ship and is going to be trying to find somewhere else to go to make sure that they get that opportunity to feel heard again, to be respected again. It's a great discussion there, and that kind of goes in, a good lead into our diagnosis specifically here. It is very easy to diagnose and understand what the issue is. It is very easy to pull out that Band-Aid and just cover up the issue and take care of that issue. The problem, if we want to provide true service recovery, is understanding what the root cause is, understanding what that problem is. One of the important things I want everyone to think about here is service recovery is a loss of trust in a company from an individual. The company has lost faith, they have lost trust, whatever the terminology you want to use. They no longer believe that this company has their best interest in mind. And service recovery is the process that we're able to sit there, rebuild that trust, rebuild that confidence here. So when we're talking about diagnosis, when we're talking about clarifying the information provided and having those full detailed conversations where we're actively listening, we're asking questions to make sure we understand what's going on, that's how we identify what the root cause is. We're not just trying to figure out, okay, you don't like the fee that was assessed to you. We need to sit there and try and figure out, okay, why are you even getting a fee in the first place and what we need to do to make sure that doesn't happen again. And then you're going to want to sit there and confirm that you have that understanding. Again, when we're talking about rebuilding confidence, when we're talking about rebuilding trust, this first is going to be requiring you to show that you understand what the issue is and rebuild that faith and that confidence with the individual that you're working with. So confirming you understand is a great way to start that process, to sit there. If I'm hearing you correctly, this is what I believe your problem is. And then you're able to transparently and openly share what you understand, giving them the opportunity to say, yes, that is correct, or to say no and then offer that additional information here. Again, we need to be able to figure out what the bigger problem is if we ever truly want to move forward. When we talk about that, once we have that understanding of what's going on and we know specifically what needs to happen to resolve the problem, the root cause, that's when we go ahead and make the treatment plan. when we provide our solution for the issue, for the problem that we're going to be working forward with. The biggest thing we want to do here is take ownership of the situation. One of the most challenging or one of the easiest things to do if it's something that you're not directly able to help with is to sit there and pass the problem along. Well, I'm sorry, I'm not necessarily able to help you with this or with this particular situation here. Let me transfer you over to someone. But consider this, when you already have someone that's upset and thinking about service recovery as that lack of confidence or lack of trust, if you're sitting there having to pass along, you're just losing more trust, more faith in the customer's eyes. Not only that, you're forcing the customer to have to explain in detail everything that they just explained in detail to you to another person. So again, they're getting even more frustrated, more upset. So taking ownership is you really doing everything you possibly can. Yes, you may need to call 2 or 3 other people to get it worked out, but make sure you're the one calling that. If the customer is not going to get an immediate response, set that expectation of when they can hear from you and say, I do need to make some other phone calls to work with some other individuals on this to get this problem, properly resolved for you here. I will be back in contact with you in about 2 hours after I've had an opportunity to have the discussion. Again, be transparent in what you're going to be doing, letting them know so they understand fully the approach that you're taking. The second step of this, and as I mentioned earlier here, where the one thing I do disagree with Brene on, is it does take sympathy and empathy combined. And sympathy and empathy, when done properly, when done genuinely combined together, is going to be your best tool in providing service recovery. If you think about it today, when you get to the situation where you're ready to provide that sympathetic statement and empathize with the customer, you've solely been talking about what's wrong, what's impacting the customer, how that's making them feel, how frustrated they're getting because of that. Everything to this point has been the negative aspect of service recovery. What's wrong? This is wrong. Here's what I'm seeing. Once you understand, once you have an idea in your head of what you want to do, this is your opportunity to sit there, plant that flag in the ground, and pull a 180 on your approach. One of the big things, and one of the reasons why I say sympathy needs to be a part of this, is apologizing, providing that sympathy. Apologizing is not an admission of guilt. It is not you saying, we screwed up. An apology is an admission that something went wrong. And when you're sitting there talking to a customer, a lot of time they just want to hear that they're not crazy. They want to know that they're right for feeling the way that they're feeling and that they're not just completely out of line with their emotions and with their understanding. So when you sit there and are able to say, John, I'm truly sorry that this has happened to you, you're able to sit there and you're able to break them down a little bit and confirm to them that they are correct, that this is a problem, that you understand this is a problem. And that's when you bring in the empathy. That's when you open yourself up, find the thing that you connect with, and you can say, I can completely understand why you feel so frustrated in this situation. Talk about the grumpy cat, situation, the grumpy cat scenario. I can completely understand how frustrating it is when you have no other options and you're forced here and we're not hearing you. We're not able to provide what you're needing, from us in this particular situation. Providing that sympathy, providing that empathy. You're able to sit there now and start focusing on what you're going to do to fix the situation as opposed to what's caused the situation, which is why I mentioned that 180. From there, we talk about communication, us providing them with more information, how we work with them directly. If it's a situation where the customer just has a misunderstanding, educate them. Let them know exactly why things are the way they are and how that impacts them directly. Obviously, you want to avoid statements like, well, you shouldn't do this or you need to do this. Just explain in general terms. If it's something that they messed up, they're going to realize that they messed up and you don't need to sit there and tell them that they screwed up. When it comes time to correcting, if it's something that the bank made, absolutely correct the problem, but let them know exactly what they're doing, let them know how they should see this resolved moving forward, what different opportunities they have to check up and make sure everything's moving forward. And again, if you have to refer, if this is a situation that you're 100% no way, no how capable of taking care of, explain who you're referring to and why you're referring to them specifically, and then in the referral, give as much of the information as possible so the customer doesn't have to explain it again. When you do all of these things together, that's when you start talking about restoring confidence and making the customer feel that, you know, Busey is not only confident, but you're confident you're going to be able to help and move forward. Finally, when we get to the follow-up here, again, that's making good on our promise. If we're telling customers we're going to do something, we need to make sure, above all else, that we are doing just that. Checking in with the customer is very important to this one. We threw it out earlier. Just because it works today doesn't mean it works a month from now. If you're going to put through something, you know, that says, you know, there's a fee on a customer that has been applied incorrectly, set a reminder on your own calendar just to sit there and check the customer's profile to make sure the next time the billing cycle comes around that that fee is not on there. If it is, obviously something wasn't done correctly, so you're able to sit there, correct the issue before it impacts the customer, before the customer sees that. So again, taking that extra step to ensure that that pain doesn't pop back up for the customer. And then finally, closing the loop. If you've had to work with other people, let them know that the situation's been resolved. Let them know that everything's been handled as you're expecting it to be handled, just so they don't have to follow up. You know, one of the more frustrating things could be, you know, having someone put something in action that the customer was expecting to be cleared out and handled, and if you're not letting everyone know, there may be a possibility that they don't see that. Finally, that brings us to the last step and the prevention aspect of it. One of the big things I can mention here is that, again, if we see a problem that is impacting customers and we don't do anything about it ourselves to make sure that that doesn't pop up and happen or to make sure that doesn't occur again to other customers, we're doing that customer a disservice, we're doing all of our other customers a disservice. So what are some of the things that we can do as associates to take preventative measures to make sure an issue that impacted one customer doesn't impact future customers? You can go ahead and chat in, you can share over the phone, and I will type in as they come. All right, we have our first response, team education. I actually think that is a great point here. When you're talking about team education, everyone should have, you know, a team meeting once a week, once every other week. You know, and if it's something that you're seeing that, you know, there isn't anything wrong with the policy or with the procedure, if no one made a mistake, be it the customer or be us internally, it just happened to be a really quirky situation that just caused a little more problems or a little more pain than what you would have liked to have seen, take that as an opportunity to share with your team and let them know exactly how that impacted the situation so they're better prepared to handle it if something like that pops up, able to better diagnose something a little more quickly. I've got a couple more that typed in here that got chatted in, so give me a moment to read these real quick. All right, so we had one that was, again, cross-training as well, working with the clients from beginning to end to accomplish a goal, and especially if you're working with someone else, you know, using that as an opportunity to provide that education to the customer. Okay, here's where the issue, you know, started from. Here's why it started. So being able to sit there and provide a full response that educates them on what's going on and gives them an idea of what may potentially be, you know, the cause or potential resolution to the issue. Bringing it to a supervisor's attention was another one that was chatted in. That is also a good recommendation here, and if I can spell. Bring to supervisor's attention, especially from the standpoint that you may not be in a position yourself to impact any kind of real change, but there are a series of groups and committees out there that meet just to make sure that our customers are not negatively impacted by anything. You know, one of the things I can think about in particular, just off the top of my head, is the product committee. So the product committee, these are individuals that sit there and review the products that we offer to our customers and make sure that these products make sense for our customers and don't negatively impact our customers. Whenever we have a merger acquisition, the Pulaski one comes in mind specifically for me, they review all the products and offerings that the new company that is being merged offers. They compare those against the products that Busey currently offers, and then they look to see what makes more sense. And the reason why I say Pulaski sticks out, because there are actually a lot of Pulaski products that became Busey products and replaced some old Busey products just because they were better fits for customers, because they made more sense for customers. So bringing to supervisors' attention if something's going on, they're able to sit there and potentially take something to a product committee should something like that happen. So always a great opportunity there with that one. Submitting suggestions on what the issue is and what you feel may correct it. Absolutely, again, a similar situation with the product committee with bringing it to a supervisor. Basically any tool that you have to leverage in your advantage is absolutely one we want to. So the one I'll close out on again is making sure we track notes. If you have a customer relationship management tool, if it's worth in there, make sure you put that information in there, just because that is valuable information for future associates to see, just to make sure that they're not walking into a buzzsaw, so to speak. If we can sit there and we can educate ourselves on problems and knowing what problems are before they even pop up, we're going to be able to handle things a lot quicker if something should happen when something does happen. Thank you all for your participation today. Hard to believe, like I said, that we're towards the end of the Service Academy cycle here, but your next session will be in May. That is the Art of Wow. Similar today in how we talked about manufacturing service recovery, we're going to talk about how we can manufacture those experiences that really just stick with a customer, that remind them. We'll have a great video that we'll be sharing with, one that you're going to want to see, one that you'll like, and I hope you do enjoy that. As far as follow-up for this class, I will be sending out an email today to everyone with a service recovery prescription form. Again, what we're going to ask everyone to do, if you have an opportunity for service recovery, sit there and take a little bit of time and think about the 5 steps that we talked about today. Think about how you're going to diagnose the situation and talk about that, jot it down, just to really have that formalized thinking or that formalized thought process to talk about those 5 specific categories for that one interaction. See if you would have handled something differently. See if there's something else that you can do. Again, we'll send that out in the follow-up email today. Otherwise, thank you all again for attending, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Colin.
Thank you.
Thank you.